Michelle Farabee, Deputy Director of NASA Langley's Office of Strategic Analysis, Communications, and Business Development. To everyone watching, thank you. I'm excited to bring you what I believe will be a fascinating discussion. We are exploring the power of African American leaders in NASA. We've assembled an esteemed panel of experts, professionals who truly embody the idea of NASA leadership. Throughout our history, NASA's success is driven by people of diverse backgrounds. The world has come to know Langley's hidden figures, but there are plenty of other inspiring stories to tell. At Langley, important contributors such as Thomas Birdsong, a Black engineer who came to work in 1953 for the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, our predecessor, NASA's predecessor. He went on to do essential wind tunnel work for the Apollo program. Another example is Mr. Stanley Woodard, an engineer and prolific inventor who filed more than 22 U.S. and international patents before passing away in 2011 at the age of 51. In between, there have been so many others. I know the same is true across the agency. Black History Month is the perfect time to reflect on what's been accomplished by so many and to see what we can learn from our triumphs and struggles. We're honored to be standing on the shoulders of some true giants. Whether they're pioneers celebrated around the globe or everyday heroes who have made a difference for our agency and our nation, we have such a proud heritage to draw on, and we will continue that heritage every day. So I invite you to listen and reflect with us as we discuss our agency's past, present, and future as shaped by African American leaders. Now I'll turn you over to Mr. Glenn Delgado, NASA's Associate Administrator for Small Business Programs. Glenn?
Thank you, Michelle, for those kind words. Those are greatly appreciated. And I really would like to welcome our audience to today's event. I think you'll find this panel very stimulating and giving you a lot of food for thought about leadership at NASA. It is a very diverse panel, and I'd like to introduce them to you. First, I'd like to introduce Ms. Vanessa White. She is the Deputy Center Director at Johnson Space Center. Then a good friend of mine, Dr. Woodrow Whitlow, who's the former Center Director at Glenn Research Center, as well as the former Associate Administrator for Mission Support at headquarters. Next, we have Ms. Brenda Manuel, who's also a retired Associate Administrator for Diversity and Equal Opportunity at NASA headquarters. Hal Walker Jr., who's a retired Apollo laser scientist who did fascinating work, and I'm sure he'll talk to you about that a little bit. And last is Mr. Clayton Turner, who's the current Center Director at Langley Research Center. So the first thing that I really want to do is ask each of you a question, and in 3 words or less, I'm going to ask each of you, what does leadership mean to you? So with that, I'll start off with Vanessa. What does leadership mean to you, Vanessa?
But in 3 words, I guess I would say motivate to achieve.
Thank you. Well stated. Woodrow, same question to you.
Inspiring the workforce.
And that you did too. Brenda.
I would say vision and accountability.
Hal Walker.
Trust and commitment.
Well said. And Clayton, if you can wrap that up for us.
Yes, I would say servant to enable.
Servant to enable. Okay, those are all very different perspectives, and that's the reason exactly why we have a panel, so we can get a diversity of ideas and opinions here. So I'm going to talk to you guys and just get a feel for our audience of how Black leadership is doing at NASA. So what the first thing I really want to do is I'll ask Clayton and Vanessa this question. As a successful leader, what do you wish you had known before taking your first management role?
So my answer would be that I would have liked to have known the focus on the people. I focus on the technical job and the delivering of the products and services, but you require more focus on the people to enable them to do exactly that.
That's well said. Vanessa?
So for me, I began my career as a project engineer. And like Clayton, focusing on, developing the best product. And then when I became a leader, learning and understanding situational leadership was key for me. Finding out that, not everybody comes to work with the same baseline. You know, coming in for myself, my parents basically were disciplinarians and pushed us to excel. And so coming to work as a hard worker and wanting to always understand and do the best was just by nature. And then finding maybe not everybody is the same. So getting the skills to be able to motivate others that may not necessarily have that same baseline. It was key.
Yeah, that is something very important. I found that myself as I've been doing my job over the last 14 years here. Okay, there's a video question that came in, so I'm going to go that way.
As people who have absolutely paved the path for young Black scientists and space professionals, how does it feel to see your legacy and impact real time?
I'm going to direct that question back to you again, Vanessa, because your technical background, and Hal also to you.
Well, I would say, Glenn, myself, I've had a really good career and been able to achieve a lot. But looking at where we are today, where we have so many African Americans that are, you know, just even the increase in the astronaut corps, for example. Then just looking at the number of people that we have in leadership, you know, looking at Clayton as center director at Langley Research Center and others across the agency, it makes me feel that we have accomplished quite a lot. You know, I know that it's been a road for us to make it to this point. And a lot of people, you know, Brenda and Woodrow, the work and others that they put in to make it so that we can get to where we are today. But I'm very proud to say that, you know, they paved the way, and then others now are able to stand on their shoulders.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's well said. Okay, Hal.
I had the opportunity to work with Ron McNair, as he was my office mate while he was at Hughes Aircraft Company. So we had a chance to talk about the future of aerospace and space exploration. But I think that somehow our community doesn't feel an attraction. I never felt our community had an attraction to the space industry. I felt very fortunate growing up as a youngster. In those early days, I saw movies like Buck Rogers and things like that, which really stimulated my interest in space. But I don't think we saw some of this in the latter years. But I spent much of my life trying to do things as part of my AMAN program, which was a science, technology, engineering model to try to improve the participation of young Blacks, males and females in science and technology.
Well said. That's very interesting. It makes me go back and think of my days of watching Buck Rogers. I was a little younger than you, I think, though, when we were doing that. Okay, I have a question. It's like, which leadership skills were the most difficult ones to develop? I'm going to put that to Clayton and then also to Hal again.
So for me, it's being able to lead. I'm an extreme introvert, so my comfort level is in my lab and slide a pizza under the door. That's where I want to be, but that's not sufficient. And in one of my earlier careers, I actually went in as a recording engineer with the idea that I could just turn dials and knobs and get the signal to the recording device, and it would be wonderful. But what I discovered there is that you had to engage with the human being, because that's what was creating that, and that's what was going to make the best product. Now, it took a while for that to take because, as I mentioned, I am an extreme introvert, but because we have such an amazing mission, because we are coming here to do wonderful things, it matters that people are excited about what they're doing. And as Vanessa said, people come with different backgrounds, different baselines. And so part of the big part of leadership is serving those folks and creating that environment so they can do amazing things. So I would say that's the biggest thing for me, engaging with the people.
Okay, so the big question is, what kind of pizza got slid under the door?
So I can certainly share. It less likely was pizza, more likely if you're from Langley, you know, if it was Wednesdays, it was fried chicken. If it was Thursdays, it was meatloaf. So that's the way we roll. And it's been that way for almost our entire 103 years.
That sounds like a good meal to work on there. I can live with that. The other question again, so Hal, do you have an answer to what leadership skills were the most difficult to develop for you?
I think managing change. I of course, I came out of the military, and went to college for a short time and then went into the industry. And of course, managing change was a real challenge for me because, again, when you have what I call an introductory environment where you're being introduced to new things and you start to learn things as things shift and change, I struggled with that a lot. But I found out making friends, or at least developing friendship with my coworkers, always tended to give me a little bit of a backup. So, but I would say managing change is a big part of developing management skill. And one of the ways that you solve that is by building a relationship with other people involved on your team.
Okay, that's pretty well said. I understand what you're saying, and I can feel that because I've had a lot of growing to do because I was one of these young kids growing up and, got into management early. And it took me a while to understand some of these concepts that you guys are talking about, which is important. I say I'm a little opposite of Clayton because I'm more of an extrovert. So I trusted people a lot more. And sometimes I had to learn that sometimes you can't do that. And to tie Vanessa's comments back in earlier, people do come to the table with different skill sets and you have to really understand that. And that is part of the key to working with a lot of people. So that's a good thing. Now, this one would be for Brenda and Woodrow in that order. What obstacles did you have to cross to achieve your ultimate career at NASA?
Okay, I would say that early on, I began to recognize that simply doing a government job, was not going to get me where I wanted to be. And I needed to develop new skill sets. And so I came out of my comfort level and began to look for other ways that I could gain different skills. And one of the things that I did was I began to do training. And ultimately, I became a project director at a company. And this was all while I was working a government job. Subsequently, I decided I was going to again come out of my comfort level, and I went into private practice as an attorney. And so all of those things collectively gave me additional skill sets that I think helped me to get where I am today, but especially how I made it to the point of an associate administrator at NASA.
Okay, that sounds like you had a definitely well-rounded growth spurt there, going lawyers, things like that. So that's one thing I really wish I had done, is become a lawyer, but now I'm glad I didn't. I'm very happy with what I'm doing. Okay, so Woodrow.
Well, I'm going to talk about a little bit what Hal said about change and Brenda said about comfort zone. Those are the things I really had to work hard at to overcome. In my 34 years of NASA, of course, I started at Langley, then I went to headquarters, then I went back to Langley, then I went back to headquarters, then I went back to Langley, then to Glenn, then to Kennedy, then to Glenn, then to headquarters.
Sounds like you have trouble holding the job there, Woodrow. We gotta go.
Yeah. I had that problem, but I only relocated one time. I relocated from Langley to Glenn. And so I spent about 8.5 years of my career living away from home and commuting on the weekends. And, so I really had to step outside my comfort zone because I always thought that every job that I was in was the best job that there was. And I did not want to change, and really had to be pushed and forced into taking new assignments with more responsibility. And a lot of that had to do with not wanting to leave home.
Okay. That's a very good thing, because it shows that your skill levels and skill sets were developing, and they needed you in new positions to help get the leadership moving in the right direction. So, and I know I had the privilege of working with you for at least 3-4 years when you were the associate administrator at mission support. And I was in awe and learned a lot from you, and I greatly appreciate that time spent with you. So, which is good. Okay, there's another video question that came up.
What is something exciting or interesting that you have done that wasn't on your radar when you started your career?
I think that one of the things that I did was I try to look at different opportunities within NASA that would allow me to gain different perspectives, new perspectives. And as a result, I was always volunteering to do something that I hadn't done before. And I think that's extremely important for you to gain a broader perspective of what's going on, not only in the agency, but personally, how you fit in and how you can work to better yourself and do those things that are most important as a leader.
One of the things that my career gave me as an insight very early is I was either the only African-American or maybe only one other person was involved in our technology teams. I was very limited participation by our brothers or sisters. So I found that I was usually given what sometimes was referred to as a carte blanche, that if I was asked to do something, I had a lot of support. People felt obligated to try to be of assistance to us as African Americans in those days. But one of the things I gained from that experience with them is I said, I need to go in the world where things are happening. Get out of the lab where you're basically working with circuit designs or some particular test. Go out in the field where these things are happening. And I think that'll bring me back with an added sense of capability that I would have now to add to what I had in the lab. So I worked in what's called field engineering for probably the greater part of my career. And what that did is led me toward the Apollo mission, where I was asked to operate the laser that conducted the first interplanetary laser ranging experiment between the Earth and the Moon. Now, of course, as I think I've mentioned in some other articles I've written about them, I was not a member of NASA. NASA did have a laser operations team at Lick Observatory where we conducted the experiment from. However, NASA unfortunately did run into trouble, and our system was the backup, so we were brought in to take over after that incident happened. But one of the things that I always want to remind ourselves and all of the folk that work in advanced technology, if something can happen, was that Murphy's Law? Always keep an eye on Murphy's Law. If something's going to go wrong, it will. So for us, when something went wrong with my laser at Lick Observatory on the second day of the landing at the moon, of course, everybody in the world was asking questions about what are we going to do to fix this thing. And of course, the answer I gave them is let's first turn off our radios, because that allowed me to think about this for a minute. And then the other thing was that once we got things going again, headquarters let us know that we better get this reflector before the Russians did, because remember, that was Cold Wars going on. So all of a sudden I was given this kind of a command. We don't want to know what you're going to do, Hal, just go do it. You probably have heard those conversations before. But anyway, we were successful. And what I learned from that again is be ready to take on a challenge, give it everything you got.
That was very well said, Hal. And I think most of us can identify with those times. And I think all of us have heard those orders before. I don't care how you get it done, and someone turns around and leaves the room. And then you're sitting there scratching your head going, okay, let's figure this out. Okay, and actually, Courtney has another follow-up video question.
Is what you're doing now the job you dreamed of as a kid? If not, what was your childhood dream job?
I'm going to throw that into Woodrow's court, and then Vanessa, if you can follow up with that, I appreciate it.
Well, I had about 3 childhood dream jobs. My first one was I was going to play left field for the Detroit Tigers. And
What happened to the hot corner, Woodrow? You should be the hot corner, third base.
That's too close. Then I was going to be a world famous chemist. And then in about 1961, 1962, NASA started putting people on top of rockets and launching them into space. And then I decided I was going to be an astronaut. So I did my research and found out that, I thought I had to get a degree in aeronautics and astronautics and go work for NASA, then I could be an astronaut. So I went and got my degrees in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT, went to NASA, and then when the shuttle program was just gearing up in the early 80s, I applied for the program and was doing pretty good until they sent me to an eye doctor, and they had something called low light vision uncorrected. And when I went and sat in the chair and without my glasses, and they asked me to read the chart, and my response was, "What chart are you talking about?"
I say that often.
So I ended up not being an astronaut, but one thing I don't have to worry about, or don't ever have to ask myself the question of what would have happened if, because I know. And so a career as a researcher and center director and associate administrator is not so bad in NASA after all.
Yeah, that's very well said. I had almost a very similar experience because my childhood dream was to be a fighter pilot. And then they asked me to touch the red light and the green light. And I said, they're both the same color. What light's red? What light's green? So that quickly got my childhood dreams derailed a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vanessa.
So a little different for me. I grew up on the coast of South Carolina, and I used to love to watch Jacques Cousteau. And I thought that I was going to be a marine biologist, but I really didn't know how to become a marine biologist. So my biology teacher, though, she had a big influence on me. She inspired me to pursue my dreams in science. And so I went to college, and I actually started out as a microbiology major. Then I found, though, that I really didn't like microscopes all that much. And so I switched to engineering, and I never looked back, found my true calling as an engineer. I got my bachelor's degree, and then was fortunate that I was able to actually get a master's in bioengineering. So I was able to combine the two. And so when I got to NASA, I actually started my career doing experiments on astronauts. And that was my dream job. Somebody talked about how you have a job and you think that's the best job ever, so I don't want to ever let it go. And that was it for me. But I will say, taking risk and changing jobs, working my way up through the ladder to becoming a deputy center director here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. It is a great job.
It's very fascinating. What part of South Carolina did you grow up at?
Well, it's near Myrtle Beach.
Okay. Yeah, because my wife's family's from around there, or near the Florence neighborhood, but I go to Myrtle Beach a lot because I try to chase that little white ball called golf, and that's the place where a lot of people go. So
that's my happy place.
Yeah, it is mine too. Yeah, but sometimes it's frustrating when you're out on Myrtle Beach. I'll tell you that. Woodrow and I used to play quite a bit, so we had a lot of fun. Next question is, what is the most important leadership lesson you learned? Because I think our audience would really like to get a lot out of that part, because our learning, we've gone through 20 years of this stuff, and we're trying to see if we can pass this on to the next generation a little bit.
So I will say it was in my career as I was moving from positions in the lab or project management into leadership. And Brenda, I think it's a program that you and Janet started. You wanted early career leaders to do leadership talks. And so Janet talked to me about it. And I, of course, prepared my PowerPoint slides with all the definitions of leadership and was prepared to talk down the structure of it. And Janet said, that's not what I want you. So I thought about that for a bit, and I shared some stories of what had happened in my career, not getting selected for a job and what that felt like. And having a project manager, when I was an earlier career engineer, ask me questions about my work. And she just asked question after question after question. And when I went back to my desk, I sat and said, well, why did she ask me this? And why did she ask me that? And when I got to about the third one, it occurred to me there was a better way to do it. Now, she could have just told me, go do it this way, but she chose to invest time in me for me to figure it out. So when you share those stories and talk about those things, and at the end of that talk, I had several people come up and they were in tears, not because I was an amazing speaker. That certainly wasn't the case. It was because they heard everything didn't go perfectly. Everything didn't go right. So the lesson I will say is be willing to share yourself. And as an introvert, that's really hard for me. But you have to be willing to share yourself. Your people have to see it. And that goes beyond our work. We have to share ourselves, the see it to be it. So that was a big lesson for me in leadership. You have to be willing to be open and in some cases vulnerable.
That was very well said. I think people can definitely learn a lot just from listening to that part. And I'm glad that time to actually understand you as an introvert and bring it out of you, because I see you just doing the PowerPoint, and that person being able to extract that out of you opens you up, I think, a little more to really develop you into who you are. That was well said. Vanessa.
So I will say probably empowering your team or your organization. Not, as Clayton said, micromanaging and telling them how to do it, but helping them to learn. But I think trust, I think maybe Hal mentioned that earlier, but having trust in your team and giving them the resources, but letting them know that you trust that they're going to go and they're going to do the right thing. And I have found that when you empower people, they do amazing. They do amazing because they know that you have their back when they need you, but you trust that they're going to get the job done.
That's well said too. I'm gonna, I'm the moderator, I'll throw in a little bit my opinion of that, and then I'm actually going to open it up to Woodrow and Brenda a little bit if they want to comment on what's the most important leadership lesson you learned. But as a leader, I won't say unfortunately, but I came into NASA as an assistant administrator back in the day. So I came in high. I used to work on the staff of the Secretary of the Navy for a while. I used to buy major weapon systems. I used to buy the F-18 and things of that nature, and learned a lot of my leadership skills. But the most important thing I really learned once I became a supervisor and then a leader is you have to trust your people. And both Hal and Vanessa said that very well. And I'm a very hands-off manager, leader. I let people learn a little bit by their mistakes, and then I teach them how they made their mistake, but I make sure they were trained up front. And if they make a mistake, they learn a lot from that, and they won't usually make that same mistake again, and they'll grow from it, and they appreciate you trusting them to learn that way a little bit. And it's critical that you support your people. My big thing is, I always praise in public and scold in private is one of the most important things. And I never accept the glory per se, but I will always accept the blame. Okay, if something goes wrong, if it's something really well done, the team did it, and I'm just proud to be a part of the team. If something goes wrong, it's my problem, my fault, and I'll take care of the people religiously. I'll defend them to my dying day. And I think that really builds the trust, and it builds the respect of your leadership skills, and people will go to the mat for you, really, and they do. And I think that's how we have such a successful agency and such a successful program in my case. So, Woodrow, I'll give you a chance to add anything onto that you would like to say. Well,
I'll just briefly, the people are always watching you. So
well said.
hold yourself accountable, and the things that you say you're going to do, go out and do those things, and don't go asking your workforce to do something that you yourself would not do.
Well said.
Well said.
Very well said. Sometimes that drives my team crazy, though, because, I do a lot of outreach, and sometimes there's a lot of last minute setup that you have to do.
Yeah.
Checking in registration people. We have 2,000 people at the door. So I drop what I'm doing. I start helping them to register people, and they go, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're the AA. No, I'm part of the team. The team needs to get it done. Let's get it done. So I sometimes get yelled at for it, but other times, hey, I'm still part of the team. I got to get it done. Yeah. So Brenda, what would you like to say?
I would say one of the most important things is inspiring your team. And again, as has been said, you have to make sure that your people know that you're behind them. The other thing I would say is that it's extremely important that you manage expectations. Oftentimes, the things that you want to do take time. And so you have to be strategic. You have to make sure that your team understands that whatever you do, it has to be done in excellence. And so it's more important that you plan and that you be strategic. And then when you execute, what you're doing is putting forth programs or projects that will be beneficial to all that you're seeking to address. And I think if employees see that that's a recipe for success, it inspires them to do things in the future in the same manner.
Well said. That's something I can take to school, that's for sure. The next question I have is, what preparation or advice would you give to those who are trying to achieve a leadership role at NASA? So with that, I'll go with Woodrow. Woodrow, would you like to say anything on that one?
The NASA workforce is special. I used to say every day I get to go to work with some of the smartest people in the world. And what comes with that is the workforce wants to make sure you have some knowledge. So there's more respect for your knowledge than there is simply for a position that you hold. So I always tell people who are trying to move up, spend enough time to have some achievements, build a reputation, as Brenda just said, building that reputation for excellence in some field, instead of spending a few months here, a few months there, trying to jump around to move quickly up the organizational ladder, because at some point you'll be blocked. And take advantage of the excellent leadership development programs that the agency has. There's plenty of those, and what I always do, I would look at the development programs we would have, and I would say, okay, now who's been to these programs? And I would look and find out who went the furthest, and I say, yeah, that's the program I want to go to, because these people went to this program and they went the furthest. And one of the good things about those development programs is that sometimes people will go and they will find out, well, I don't want to be in a leadership position. And that's a positive result too, because we don't want to go around and take our best engineers, our best scientists, our best researchers, and turn them into our worst leaders. So we have the senior technologists and the senior leaders career track for those people who don't want to be leaders. So build some excellence, explore the leadership development programs, and then find out if leadership truly is the right career path for yourself.
Well said with that, because we find that a lot, especially in technical people. They are good managers, but they're not good leaders sometimes, because they have different skill sets. We love them as their technical management because they put us on the moon and Mars and beyond. But leadership, there might not be there sometimes. So that's a good lesson to learn. Brenda, if you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I do. I would like to say that it's important that you observe leadership. If you can find one or two people that you can observe, sometimes it gives you an insight into how you should operate. It's looking at how they operate in adverse circumstances, as well as in those circumstances that are good. It helps you to gain a perspective that leadership is not easy, that there are going to be difficult times. You're going to have to make difficult decisions. And how do you weather those storms? And that's important in looking at how other people who have gained leadership roles have handled those kinds of situations.
That is great, because I can tell you I've had a lot of those hard days. So, and you do have to learn a lot of lessons from that. That's true. Okay, we're going to go to
Glenn, can
Yes.
I add something to that one? Because
Please.
I completely agree with the previous responses. The one thing that I would want to add, I know at our center, we do have a formal mentoring program. And even if you don't have a formal mentoring program, I encourage folks to get a mentor, somebody that you can learn from, where you have a relationship where this person is helping you, giving you advice and guidance, and being willing to listen to that advice. But I do think that that's very important, especially to help with the early folks that are coming in. If you're early in your career, to helping you to understand the culture of the agency, of the center where you are, but to have a mentor.
Okay, that's well said. And I do mentor a lot of people, and to pile with that, I also ask them to get another mentor, someone that has a different point of view of me, so that way they can see diverse ways that people are both successful. So, because my style might not match them as well, but I can still give them good leadership and advice, and somebody else can complement that. And the synergy between the two of us might make that person a whole lot better than just one perspective. So that's a very good point too. Okay, so we'll take our last video question.
What resources are available to help families and educators learn about the ways that Black people have always been a part of the NASA story?
Okay, well, that's a really interesting question. For me, when I think about the fact that, Hidden Figures came out as a movie, and for us in the NASA workforce, we were not even aware. And so I think it was really unfortunate that that story had not been told, right? Because for, at least for myself, when I saw that movie, I was like, oh, wow. There were these women that had gone through this, 30 years before I was going through these same things. And, had I maybe known that, maybe it would have let me know, hey, they did it, so you can do it. So, just having that resource and knowing about it, it is very important. I, know that we have history projects now, and, I encourage all of you to be a part of that, but where we can share those stories. I like Clayton's statement early about, sharing and letting others know your story so that they too can know that they can achieve. But, I know for me, those resources weren't available, but I am glad now that the stories are being told.
Very well said. Woodrow, we're starting to run short on time, so your reply to that.
So be brief.
See, that's why you're a good leader.
Vanessa, talked about the Hidden Figures, and some years ago, not too long after I started at Langley, I did a Black History Month speech at Fannie Mae, and they wanted me to talk about African Americans in the space program. So I actually had a chance to interview Mary Jackson and Katherine Johnson, because they brought my wife into the AKA sorority when we were there, and Mary told me about having to go to other buildings to go to the bathroom and the struggles. And so they were people like Mary, Catherine, Christine Darden, Rosa Webster, Nettie Falcon, Bob Lee, who I played basketball against at Langley. So I had a chance to talk to a lot of what I would call the more senior folks, when I first got to Langley. And then there's a book that I highly recommend, that We Could Not Fail, and it's about the first African Americans in the space program, and how the space program was set up, the role African Americans had, and just interesting stories about folks at some of the centers in the South who couldn't live near the center for obvious reasons, but had to drive through Klan territory to get back and forth to work. So I would highly recommend that book. And so I'll just cut it right there since we're short on time.
Okay, that was interesting. I got to actually go to the premiere of Hidden Figures with all the NASA leadership when it was at the the museum up in DC, and it was quite eye-opening. My wife and I were there, and I was like almost in shock watching that movie. So it was a good education, very good education. Okay, so in wrapping this up, if you can, in about a minute or less, I'm going to ask each one of you, and the same order I did at the very beginning. Why is it important to have African-American leadership at NASA? So if you can, in a minute or less, Vanessa, I'll open up with you as I did at the beginning.
So I do think, diversity and inclusion is tied to innovation, right? So being able to come to work and bring your whole self to work and feel that you are included and that you're able to contribute allows you to add to the richness of what's happening here. And so it's very important for people to come to work and be able to do that. I've had people, say to me, I don't see anybody, this was before we had African Americans in leadership. I don't see anybody that looks like me that's in leadership. Why should I stay here? What's the path for me? And I think, having an understanding that, yes, there is a path for you if that's your choice or desire. So it's very important for us to be able to come and be our whole selves, to contribute, have diverse perspectives, as this panel. It's a very beautiful panel with very diverse ideas, but to be able all to come to work and be a participant and be fully appreciated.
That was well said, well articulated. Okay, my friend, Mr. Woodrow, what do you have to say?
Well, I would just briefly say, it's been shown that diverse teams give better results. And so, and as Vanessa said, we have to have examples of African Americans in leadership roles if we're going to bring African Americans into the organization, to help with that diversity. And so that's why it's important that we have these examples out there to say, yes, I too can achieve my full potential if I join NASA or if I join this organization. And I will just close by saying it's not about recruiting, it's about selecting.
Amen to that. Okay, Brenda.
Well, as the Associate Administrator for Diversity and Equal Opportunity at NASA, formerly, I was definitely a proponent of diversity and inclusion as well as equity. I think it's the cornerstone of having a great organization. I think that it is important that we be able to bring different perspectives, different skill sets, give different backgrounds to what we do. I think NASA is far better as an agency because we have become diverse, because we have opened up and allowed minorities and women to grow and to move into higher level positions. I think it has made NASA a far better organization. It's taken some time for us to get there, but I think that if we look back at our history, I think we'll see that we are in a position to move forward because we have embraced diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. Okay, Hal, what would you like to say in closing?
I'm just proud to be associated with NASA. I've always been associated in some ways with NASA, going back to the Project Relay, the first orbiting communications satellite. I was at STL. We built the first communications downlink and uplink for it. And of course, that led on to Apollo 11 and so forth. But I want to leave us and our young people that's maybe going to listen to this little thought I'm going to read about U.S. prepares for off-world future. The U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act, which President Obama signed into law on November 25th, 2015, granting U.S. citizens the rights to resources they obtain from asteroids or other bodies beyond Earth. So, guys, there's business out there. Who can do it? You can. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Hal. Clayton, you have the honor of wrapping up this esteemed panel. And before we close and Clayton close, I would like to say thank you to each of you. I greatly appreciate everything. And Clayton.
Thank you, Glenn. So a little bit on what Hal was saying. So at NASA, our mission is to reach for new heights, to reveal the unknown for the benefit of humankind. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And you can't do that with 10 of me or 10 of anybody. You need diverse thought, you need new ideas, and you need to achieve our mission, we have to find that unity. And to achieve our mission, our legacy is not what we're doing today, is what's following us. So I will tell you, I spent my first day as center director with a classroom of 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds. And I talked to 4-year-olds about the solar system, and we made one, and each of them could talk about it. I talked to the 3-year-olds about gravity, aerothermodynamics, coding. And then I asked, when I dropped the ball, why did this ball fall? And a 3-year-old young lady told me, because it's not a balloon. And she told me why a balloon goes up. That's what we want to inspire. We not only need to deliver today, but if we're going to take on the challenges, not only of our nation, but of our planet, we need every mind we can get. There's no time, no room to put anybody to the side. We need to provide opportunities. To Woodrow's point, it's not just recruiting, it's what you do when you get here. Everybody should feel inclusive and part of it. And I will grab a quote that somebody shared from me from Woodrow. Where you sit at the table doesn't make you a leader. And Woodrow, I intentionally move around because somebody shared that quote with me. Because being a leader is taking leadership and leading others and serving. So I'll wrap up with that. Reach for new heights to reveal the unknown for the benefit of humankind. We need everybody. I mean everybody, every bright mind that's willing.
Wow. It was truly my honor to sit with each of you distinguished people. Even just sitting here through this hour, I have learned a lot, and I greatly, greatly appreciate you guys taking your time and sharing this with the audience that we have today. And with that, I'll say thank you very much, and I'll close, and I'll turn it over to Ashley to close us out. And I appreciate each and every one of you and your time, and you and the audience for taking the time to listen to us. Thank you.
Wow, what an incredible session. If you're anything like me, I have pages of notes and special moments that I'll be sure to take away from today. One of the most important messages that we can receive from this esteemed panel is that leadership requires vision, compassion, trust, and innovation. Leadership also requires brave individuals that are paving the way for others to follow. And we are grateful to these bold leaders that have worked and are still working to ensure that NASA fully reflects its core values, including the newest core value of inclusion. If it's true that we stand on the shoulders of giants that have gone before us, then clearly we stand on the shoulders of African American leaders who have worked tirelessly for equity and fairness during NASA's history. We extend our gratitude to our excellent moderator, Glenn Delgado, and our excellent panelists, Vanessa, Clayton, Woodrow, Brenda, and Hal for their time. This special presentation was brought to the agency by the African American Employee Resource Groups at Langley headquarters in Johnson and the NASA headquarters chapter of Blacks in Government. We want to thank the Agency Office of Communication for ensuring that we were all able to hear and see this excellent presentation. And finally, thank you to the event planning team for your commitment in bringing this event to life.